Hello, welcome to the Culture Quarter. I'm Siobhan Heanue. Coming up on this episode, the small town kid who grew up to discover the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, plus some precious objects from Chinese Australian history. But first, what do you get if you mix traditional Aboriginal song with improvised jazz? It's a pretty unlikely combination, but somehow it just works. Musicians from Arnhem Land have joined forces with a Melbourne orchestra, and they came to Canberra for a fellowship at the Australian National University. Vivian Nunes tuned in.
When Indigenous music is fused with contemporary jazz, the results can be a little hard to define.
It's absolutely amazing. That's what it is.
And even seasoned musicians don't know quite what to expect.
So the first time we heard the music was baffling.
But a collaboration between some Arnhem Land songmen and the Australian Art Orchestra is impressing musicologists and audiences alike.
You have two amazing music traditions, the ancient tradition of Indigenous Australia and this contemporary jazz one, meeting together, and these amazing creative sparks fly. And every time, even though they might be playing the same piece, the outcome is radically different.
The Art Orchestra has been playing with the young Wagalak group from the Nooka community for 6 years.
We play together, and I love to play with them.
The group's been awarded a fellowship at the ANU School of Music for their project Crossing Roper Bar. The project's named after the Roper River. Each wet season, the Nooka community is completely cut off by the river's water. The Roper Bar is the point where the river can be crossed when the waters subside. The group says it's a fitting metaphor for the crossing over of two musical styles. While the music is certainly avant-garde, it's also preserving part of history that might otherwise be lost.
The traditional Wagalak repertoire that has been performed at ceremonies for thousands of years is growing as a result of this collaboration.
Crossing Roper Bar is bridging more than just a river in the top end.
Now to the story of a kid from a small town with big dreams. He became one of the world's most acclaimed celebrity photographers. Douglas Kirkland has photographed the icons of film, fashion and music for 50 years. His stunning images are on display at the Gallery of Modern Art in Brisbane, where he spoke to Maria Hatzakis.
He's been doing it every day since he started, and he's not about to stop.
I'm never without one, dear.
Douglas Kirkland has captured some of the world's most enduring public figures. His career started as a young magazine photographer in 1961, trying to get a scoop. The first pictures that had been taken of Elizabeth Taylor after her husband's death.
I had very little to offer. I was thin, I was nervous, as many people might be, and I hadn't been around celebrities that much, truthfully. I came over to her and I took her hand. I said, Elizabeth, I'm new with this publication. Could you realize what it would mean to me if you'd give me an opportunity to photograph you?
The pitch worked, and this photo launched Kirkland's explosive career.
My job is, in a few words, is to have the camera so it works seamlessly, number one, and no one's aware of it almost. But most importantly, that they can feel comfortable to project to me and speak with me. So that's it. I want to be in sync with any individuals whom I'm photographing. I want them to feel comfortable in front of the lens and comfortable with me. And so that's the beginning. And then I want to try to be interpretive. When I photograph somebody in our studio, which we frequently do, I feel the first thing I should do is allow them to relax, be comfortable, and I don't have lights locked into the ceiling or anything like that, or any such thing. I have all the devices available to me, all the photographic devices, and then I want them to sort of disappear into the background because I want it to be between the individual whom I'm photographing and them.
His wife has worked alongside him for decades.
He is a very calm person. Then when he starts taking pictures, he becomes it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He becomes this possessed human being. The days we have a shoot, sometimes in the morning, I'll sort of he's walking around this and they say, "Are you in a bad mood?" He says, "No, I'm concentrating." Because if I broke a leg during a shoot, he'd probably say, "Could you please move out of the way for the moment?" And then, I'm exaggerating. He's totally consumed by his work.
Crowds are pouring in to get a closer insight into a life of work in pictures.
I like the ones on Judy Garland.
Very inspiring.
Now 76, Kirkland says it's been a long journey, but he has captured plenty of memories.
When I was an infant, my parents moved to a town of 7,000 people, and I just dreamed of being a photographer. And I almost think it's an accident that what has happened in a show like this at the Goma.
Kirkland says the secrets to the best photos are like those of life. Love, honesty, hope, and a bit of luck.
The story of the Chinese in Australia goes back at least 150 years to the gold rush. Some of those who came to seek their fortunes stayed on and had families. Now, many generations later, their stories are being told by the Chinese Museum in Melbourne. Cheryl Hall went to take a look.
I was 6 years old. We fled on a fishing boat with my mum and my brother. It was pretty cramped. We were in the oceans for about 45 days.
Were you scared?
Yes. We thought we weren't going to make it.
Michael Tran knows he's lucky to be alive and lucky to be living in Australia. He's part of an earlier wave of refugees, those who arrived by boat from war-torn Vietnam in the 1980s. He's now one of 250,000 Chinese people who call Victoria home.
Chinese people have come from all over Southeast Asia, not just from China, but from East Timor, from Singapore, from Taiwan, from Malaysia, but they've all come for different reasons. Some have come as refugees and migrants, but some have come for business migration.
While Mark Wong can trace his Australian-born family back 4 generations to the gold rush, one of his grandparents had another claim to fame. He came to Australia in 1946 during the White Australia policy because he knew Australia's immigration minister, Arthur Caldwell.
My mother's father knew Arthur Caldwell, and so he found it easier to get into Australia than most Chinese people. Arthur Caldwell made up the term, 2 Wongs don't make a white. Quite contradictory when, our family was actually friends with him.
Melbourne's Chinatown is one of the oldest continuous homes of the Chinese in Australia, though its population fell dramatically between 1900 and 1970 when the White Australia policy stopped Asian immigration.
Around 1975, my father, who was in council, suggested that we develop this as a Chinatown and promote the idea that, it's a Chinese street.
And why was that controversial?
Well, Chinese people particularly wanted to see Little Bourke Street as just a street for Chinese people, and they didn't want to see it as being turned into so-called Disneyland by calling it Chinatown and putting it up arches.
Its treasures include 3 generations of Melbourne dragons. The most recent, made for the millennium in 2000, is so big it requires 45 people inside it.
We've got some really special things in the collection that go back to the gold rush. We've got a pigtail that Chinese people used to wear queues in respect to the Manchu rule, and it's things like lambing flats where there were riots and race riots. They were said to have been cut off. A dictionary, English to Chinese or Chinese to English dictionary. And there's all phrases in there like, how do I get to the goldfields, and all kinds of different phrases. It's a very telling book because it actually, from the meaning that you read in the phrases, you get to understand the life at that time. We also have a very extensive collection of garments, really beautiful garments that are embroidered, dating back 150 years or so.
But the museum now incorporates some of the stories of the 80% of Melbourne's Chinese population who have arrived in the last 50 years. People like Wei Wei Qian, a Chinese herbalist who came to Melbourne to study English and ended up staying despite a difficult start.
How was it? It was pretty tough.
Very tough.
But Wei Wei Qian eventually changed her mind and was able to bring her husband and daughter to Australia.
And I decided, after about probably 6-8 months being English student here, I decided, actually, I love this country, I want to stay.
Mark Wong says attitudes towards the Chinese have changed dramatically.
There was quite a lot of racism in the 1970s. I think because Chinese people now have been, people are accustomed to Chinese people, they're not picked on so much. But then when a new group of people come, they get picked on, and so we're sort of way down the pecking order now.
So do you think, in hindsight, your mother did the right thing?
Definitely. I mean, like, I feel at home now. Like, you know, I wouldn't call Vietnam home now. So, and I feel very blessed to be, you know, to be living here.
Well, that's almost it for this episode, but before we go, something really special. It's 35 years since Papua New Guinea gained its independence. Photographer David Eastburn was there to capture the first decade of independence. His images went on display at the PNG High Commission. Here's a taste, and I'll see you next time on the Culture Quarter.